bet up to €100. So if your first bet loses, we'll refund your stake with a free bet. Now that's giving you more. Bruce Betting. In store, online, and now on your phone. T's and C's apply. Please gamble responsibly. See dunlewy.net.
The Cadbury Flake McFlurry is here at McDonald's. So break out your short shorts because rain or shine, summer has officially begun. Soft dairy ice cream swirled with Cadbury Flake chocolate pieces and delicious chocolatey or raspberry sauce. Available until the 6th of August.
The Hurling Show. From Off the Ball.
Hello and welcome back to the Hurling Show here on Off the Ball. I'm Shane Stapleton. Packed show coming up this week. We've got the Westmeath manager Joe Quaid coming up very shortly. He's going to talk to us about their season and also what Cork are like heading into their clash with Kilkenny this weekend. We're going to have former Laois manager and player Niall Rigney, who also managed in Kilkenny with James Stephens, talking about both Laois's massive win and also the Kilkenny game as well, referencing Cork. Oh, I've got the earphones beside my microphone there, lads. I'm letting the whole thing down and I can't quite find it. There it is. There we go.
What a pro.
Right, what a pro. All right, in studio with me, I have a couple of biffos. Michael Verney of the Irish Independent. How are you doing?
How are you going, Shane?
Not so bad. You have a lovely little mark on your nose.
Yeah, I've got one to join one on my chin now. Yeah, I just want to get one here or something like that. Like some triangle kind of thing going on.
The whole thing is jutting out nicely now. Very awfully ahead. Will O'Callaghan beside him. How are you doing?
Afternoon, Shane. How are things?
Good stuff. We can start nowhere but Laois. I was at the game in Port Laois on Sunday last beside Jack Nolan, who really gave quite an effort in co-commentary. Have a quick listen.
He has to go for a goal. 38 minutes has been played. He has brought the ball in closer to the goal. Laois players tell him that. He must go. A goal for Dublin. It goes to extra time.
This is the man who levelled the club final in 2018 and took to a replay.
Of course, Martin raised the ball. Oh, goal! It's saved the Dublin ball. John Martin puts it over. Laois ahead by a goal! The shock of the year! What a shock! The crowd come onto the field.
Oh my God, that's history. We see Westmeath getting hammered today and everyone's saying the Joe McDonough team shouldn't be in this. Well, Laois have rubbished that there now. You can see Ender Rowland getting mobbed. A couple of those late frees, incredible. The bookies had the odds out for a tip against Dublin next week. Well, you may put them up for Laois against tip now and let them go on the beer for half the week too if they want to do them no harm today.
The biggest shock this year, last year, for a long time.
For a long time. I mean, Galway nearly got shocked by Laois here 5 years ago. It was a 21-yard free at the end that was saved that stopped Laois from getting that shock. Today, 21-yard free at the end, and it was saved by the goalkeeper, the hero of the hour, Ender Rowland. But there were so many heroes on that Laois team. Just fantastic performances front to back. Willie Dunphy stands out. John Lennon very good at sweeper. Mark Kavanagh didn't miss a free all day. Just fantastic team performance. Laois gave them timber, didn't they? Really?
It was brilliant, yeah, in fairness. And the most impressive thing for me was that even when the need was greatest and the pressure was on, they kept to their game plan, never launch ball in unless they were under woeful pressure. I'd say when they were coming out with the ball from the defence and hand passing someone, I didn't actually see a ball going to ground at any stage. Every ball was to hand. It was really, really slick. And even Rowland's puck outs, he knew not to go along because there was a sweeper. They took risks as well. It was just a complete display nearly from them. And it could have been nearly better because they missed a few kind of handy enough scores at different stages too. But just brilliant. The scenes after is kind of what it's all about as well. Like, and just chatting to Ross King the other day, and he just said, like, we just have to embrace this. Like, we've never seen anything like this. He said that he was asked for everything but his underpants in the field after. But it's great for them, and they're just embracing it and living in the moment, and God only knows how they'll go on Sunday now.
Yeah, you work for Midlands Radio yourself. You were presenting the show. What were your thoughts on that?
I must admit I was a little bit emotional at the end, Shane, to be honest, because I remember I was presenting the day that they played Galway, and Niall Rigney was actually on commentary with Jack Nolan that day, and the feeling was they were going to pull off the shock, and then Owen Riley went up for the free at the end and it was blocked, and you just think maybe that chance won't come back for a team again. This is like Laois's biggest result definitely since probably winning the Leinster semi-final in 1985. You could argue maybe since they won the All-Ireland B in 1979 and got to a quarter-final that year and lost to Galway as well. They haven't had too many days to shout about against really top opposition, but this has been a remarkable year for Laois, and they're doing things in such an unconventional manner as well. Like after the game they went out to Port Laois Golf Club, had a few cans, messed around, played a bit of golf with Buffegan as well, went back into the town, enjoyed the rest of the night, and like Eddie Brennan was straight out to do interviews the next day. players have been doing interviews all week ahead of this game against Tipperary. It's kind of, while other teams are going into camp and trying to get a siege mentality, Laois are seeing this as, we've got our moment in the sun here. Here's a great chance to promote hurling in the county as well. And like, I think Eddie Brennan is a free man of Laois now at this stage. I saw someone put up a picture where he was superimposed his head onto Jesus. And I think Laois today, one of the local publications, were looking to make him an honorary Laoisman so they could have him in the top 10 sexy Laois people for next year as well. So that's the love they've got for Eddie Brennan at the moment. And even they were all at the cool camps on Monday. I saw a tweet from Boris Kilcotton. Aaron Dunphy was reffing an under 11 match last night. Like, it's great. I suppose the GA has changed. These maybe were things that were going on years ago and lads were kind of enjoying themselves and embracing it. It's probably changed a good bit, but it doesn't seem to be. Like, Ross King did an interview for the Mail last Sunday, the day of the match. They were doing interviews all week. Did it hinder their performance? Not one bit.
It never hinders anyone's performance, really.
No.
I mean, especially if you get used to doing the interviews, you don't think about it.
If nothing else, it shows the trust in your players as well. Like, if you're going to trust them to do a game plan, you're going to say, right, John Lennon, you're going to have to sit all day and be a very careful sweeper position for me. You can trust John Lennon to go out and do an interview with the paper as well.
Yeah.
And I'd say it's one thing he didn't learn from Mr. Cody. I'd say somehow. I don't think too many of his boys are ever doing interviews.
Stephen Miller, who's a journalist down in Laois as well, was telling me that after the Joe McDonagh Cup final that you couldn't buy a jersey in Laois at all. Like, they'd all been sold out everywhere. And that kind of said to me, and this is what he said, was that the little kids in the county, they don't care if you're playing at the top level or Joe McDonagh. They just want to see their team playing in a competition that they've a chance in, go out, win some matches, and all of a sudden those players are heroes. And of course, Laois are up into the Leinster Championship now for 2020, which is huge. And
they want to see them as well, though, and at least they got the chance to see them.
Yeah.
It should have been obviously live on RT the other day, given that the cameras were there for the match before that. But it was the prime time game on the Sunday game. I remember Cat Healy saying to me before, my heroes growing up, I loved the Laois lads, but I didn't see them. We didn't get to see them, so it was Kieran Carey and these boys. So they're front and centre now against Sunday, and you'd imagine that'd have a great knock-on effect.
We'll have to talk about the goat of the week. I thought there was a couple of guys who played really, really well. You know, like Mark Kavanagh, brilliant on the frees, the two Dunphys as well. But look at that man, Enda Rowland, goat of the week. There he is coming back from launching one of those frees from inside his own 45 over the black spot.
The two saves as well, like particularly the one in the second half.
Oh, the one on Danny Sutcliffe as well, pulled it out of the top corner as well. Like,
I think Eddie's calling him a quarterback this year, and that's effectively how he's playing. Like, he spreads ball out wonderfully to their wing backs into midfield. You talk about hand passes not dropping. Very rarely has a rolling pass or puck out not found a player this year.
Yeah,
it's so important.
I spoke with DJ Carey during the week, and he was telling me that he pretty much has one of the best strikes of the ball. He actually said the best strike of a ball in Ireland, and he would have had a lot of those guys with Carlo IT as well. Said they are excellent hurlers. Their heads are in the right place, because you know the way how often Laois is referred to and the dysfunction within the club culture. Then we had the Ross King thing going on to or leaving the panel after that game against Cam Ross, coming back, and you also had Eddie talking about players not committing. But he said that whole dysfunction doesn't really tell the full tale of Laois hurling. We just hear that in the media because it's, you know, you hear about the bad things.
Yeah. Well, like Joe Phelan was saying this week as well, that like effectively all they can do is concentrate on the lads that go in. And he says there's been a massive effort made by the lads who've gone into the panel. And I would imagine lads who decided not to commit or got the call from Eddie Brennan, said they weren't interested in going in, they must be sickened now. Yeah. Like a piece of silverware, the chance to go to Croke Park twice in 3 weeks when you have them in there for 14 seasons. Like, these are all magic moments for the guys who have committed onto the panel. And like, Enda Rowland's an interesting one, because I remember Enda was a very promising young goalkeeper, and Owen Riley, his club mate from St. Lazarians Abbey Leaks, who was playing outfield for his club, was the goalkeeper, and he had to wait nearly to get in ahead of Owen, and then Owen's gone off working.
He was Long Cup champion as well, wasn't he, as well?
Abbey Leaks creating two fantastic goalkeepers in the one club.
Well, what is it about certain clubs producing loads of goalkeepers? See Ballybode and St. Enda's as well. They have Dooley, they have Gary Maguire. Finn McGarry was an under-21 goalie. They have another guy who's in goal for the minors as well at the moment. Whatever. I suppose
when you have a kind of a hero or role model to look up to, maybe people gravitate towards that position a bit more.
Let's talk about the GA president and John Horan. On the back of that result, it finally came up into his kind of view that maybe there should be 6 teams in Leinster. That conversation hadn't seemed to happen with him, but you tweeted about it, Will.
I couldn't believe this. Right, by my own admission, I watched Love Island on Tuesday night, and I left the Virgin Media News on afterwards. So any shred of credibility I once had is now gone. But there was a report, I think it was Paul Ryan's report on Virgin Media, and it was, the usual one. The All-Ireland Championship is getting launched. Here's a few players. Joe Phelan is getting interviewed because Laois just pulled off shock of the weekend. And then they cut to this piece with John Horan, which we can hear now, where he talks about they only considered putting an extra team into the Leinster Championship just because Laois won.
Okay, here it comes.
I think we have to look into it in the context of the Laois result and just get the balance of it right. There are other factors involved with it other than just increasing it to 6. Certainly Laois have given us something to think about. That, if we're all going to be very honest, we wouldn't have thought last week that's the position we would have found ourselves in, but fair play to Laois, they've caused us to have a think about it again.
How would he not have had to think about it beforehand? I do wonder about some of these lads. Are they actually talking to people on the ground? Are they actually having conversations? And I have to wonder who is advising him with some of the things that he's come out with during his reign. Like, does he have conversations? Is he media briefed or anything? Because some of the stuff he's coming out with is just preposterous. Like,
we'll bring on Joe Quaid in a second, but just to read out what Cara Healy said to you, Will O'Callaghan. Cara Healy being an ex-Laois hurler, he's injured, and footballer as well, injured at the moment, I believe.
Yeah, he does knee last summer.
So he does in quote, sort of quotation marks. Did you hear the results, John? What's that? Laois beat Dublin. You're joking. No, by 2 points. That's a surprise. Maybe those teams aren't too shite after all. Should we add one of them next year? So we've Joe Quaid on the line. How are you doing, Joe?
How's it going, Jen?
Not so bad, not so bad. Joe's obviously Westmeath manager. What do you make of those comments from John Horan and the idea that 6 teams in Leinster hadn't even come onto his radar?
But sure, it just shows the lip service that is paid to the second tier teams. I suppose Laois bucked the trend definitely last weekend by beating Dublin. But while a lot of people say it was a surprise, I wasn't that surprised that it happened, because we played Laois the week before, and the display they gave, their movement, their forwards, their forward movement, and of course their goalie. I've never seen a goalie hit a ball 10 feet off the ground from 1 goals in Croke Park down to nearly the 21 without it deviating an inch. So, like, these guys, they're not living in the real world. Like it's, what do they call it? Scrum management. We'll manage it as it's happening instead of having a plan. Like, if they want to develop hurling in the second tier counties, like, what's wrong with keeping Carlow, keeping Laois, put in maybe Antrim and Westmeath maybe into 2 groups of 4 in Leinster? At least then you get a chance to stay up there for a year or 2 if you get up for 2 years or more, and you get to develop your hurling. Because look, we saw last Sunday against Cork, like, the difference in conditioning, the pace of the game, everything. It's massive. And like, we came from Cork, who were after beating Limerick, the All-Ireland champions, league champions, Munster champions twice this year, and we had been playing Division 2A and Joe McDonough. So we were basically on a hiding to nothing. Laois, okay, were that step ahead of us. They had been in Division 1B and qualified and played Limerick in a league quarter-final. Plus, Laois have been, I think, 28 out of the last 30 years have been in Division 1 hurling, whereas the likes of Westmeath, it's the first time in 33 years that we'll be playing Division 1 hurling next year. But if you go in and move more teams up into the Leinster Championship, and even in the league, make the league a slightly larger, bigger amount of teams in it, cut out the quarterfinals, it can be done. It'll give teams an opportunity to improve, because the only way you will improve is if you're playing at a higher level. We all know that, whether it be at club, I say it there, your club teams, your 14s and 16s and the inter B and C competitions. If you enter them into the A competition, yeah, they might take an odd beating, but that's the only way they'll improve.
So when you look at the tiered structure in the Hurling Championship, you've managed Kildare to the Christy Ring Cup final last year, you've taken Westmeath to the final again this year. Do you not? So you just think that structured system is wrong? Whereas, like, you look at the football side of the things and you have, like, awful hammerings all the time. The provincial championships, no one is really interested in them. They are a damn squib as well. So the hurling, it's gone too far the other way.
Look, I think the tiered system in the hurling works up to a point. Where it doesn't work is the one up, one down scenario. Because, like, if Laois go up next year play Leinster Championship, even if they pull off one win, let's say they beat Dublin again, the chances are that they'll still probably be facing relegation if you don't win 2 matches. Like, we saw what Laois produced against us 2 weeks ago and against Dublin last week. They are a team that need to be playing top division hurling to improve. Same with Westmeath. Like, I had an argument last year about Kildare. We won the Christie Ring and we weren't allowed to go up to play a playoff against Antrim a week later. We weren't allowed to go up. Yeah, they changed it this year, but like, they should be allowed to come up as well. And to the McDonagh and have a go, because if you're going to stay at the same level, it happened in Kildare this year. I felt sorry for David Herity. He lost about, I'd say, 8 to 10 players from the Kildare panel that won the Christie Ring last year. Now, on the other side of it, with John Horan, I know the two Offaly boys, they'll probably love this. If Laois go up, does it mean Laois and Carlow stay up in Leinster, and does that mean Offaly don't get relegated down to Christie Ring?
Yeah, sweet little reprieve if that happened. But
it can't happen.
No, it can't in 2021. So I think it'd be another year before they can win. They're due to discuss all this next week, but I don't think they can make a change until this 3-year cycle of the Tier Championship finishes in 2020. So 2021 will be the first year you could have it. Jim
Bulger had moved with the possibility of 6 teams, and he also said 2 fours, and we were chatting to him yesterday, Leinster GA chairman. So, but like, I'd say 6 teams is the more likely, and that would be 2021, not 2020.
Joe, just to ask you then about Westmeath's season overall. So 2 wins, a draw and a loss in the regulation games, and then losing the Joe McDonagh final as well, 11 points to Laois. How do you reflect on the season overall?
Look, to be fair, when I went in around this time last year, I was talking to the Westmeath lads, and the one thing I said that we'd get up to Division 1 and we'd win the McDonagh within 3 years. Now, it almost happened that we did the whole lot in year 1, which, while it would have been great and probably great for my CV, for the development of Westmeath hurling, it probably would have been too soon. No, don't get me wrong, the day above in Croke Park for the McDonagh final, I wanted to win it as much as anybody else. But look, we've qualified for Division 1 next year. Now, I suppose it's unfortunate in one sense that with the new structures in the league, we've probably gone from the equivalent of the old Division 2A, bypassed 1B and gone straight into 1A. But look, it's something the lads are looking forward to. We said it in the dressing room after the Cork match the last day. We see the level we need to get to, and we have to get to it. If we don't, we'll ship a lot of beatings in the league, but we know what's ahead of us. It's massive for the lads. It's 33 years since they played Division 1 hurling. We have to look back at the year. The last week, 10 days have been miserable, but up to that, we'd won competitive match last all year. We won the Cure Cup, we won Division 2, the league, which I've been trying to for years, and we got that McDonagh final. I suppose the disappointment wouldn't have been as bad maybe if we didn't get that McDonagh final and just finished 3rd. But look, you get that final, you either win or you learn, and we've definitely learned from the last 8-10 days.
Joe, congrats on what's been a great year, as you say, winning the Kyo Cup, winning Division 2A, getting them over the line in that one. In terms of the McDonagh Cup finalists playing against the 3rd team in Munster, like obviously very difficult even psychologically to turn around after losing the big final and going straight out to play a big team. Is there an argument to be said that maybe only the McDonagh Cup finalists should progress, because both years now there's been heavy enough beatings for the teams who've lost the McDonagh Cup final?
Well, I suppose there's been beatings for the teams that have won it as well. I suppose Carlow won it last year and Limerick gave them a trimming in Carlow. And I suppose we were cognizant of that this year. And some scribes said we played 2 sweepers last week. We didn't. We played 1 sweeper for the first 16 minutes against Cork. Obviously, we had to try and nullify a goal threat. Now, obviously, they hit us for 40 points. But look, we were reasonably happy with our display. We scored 20 points. We hit 17 miles. That's 37 chances. And definitely 12 out of that 17 points we hit were scoreable chances. So we were happy enough from that side of it. Obviously, the result, we were always going to be chasing it because it's very hard to pick lads up. So I suppose, Will, to answer your question, it's probably better if they sort out the Leinster Championship, there'll be no need for 2 teams to be playing. The one team will be gone up, and hopefully there'll be, maybe you'll have your teams in the Leinster then are closing the gap on each other. Like you look at Wexford. Wexford won the Leinster final, but they'd beaten Carlow. They'd only won 2 matches. They beat Carlow, was it, and won the Leinster. They'd drawn other matches. So it is tight there. It's probably a lot tighter there. There was a lot of beatings handed out in Munster, but there's no repercussions for Munster teams if you get a beating. And like, even to go back to the structures again, it's fine because Laois played well and Laois beat Dublin to look at it. But just say Kerry win the McDonagh. They go out the following week, let's say, against Dublin, and let's say they beat Dublin. They still have to play the bottom team in Munster to play Munster Championship the following year. It's a bit like bookies taking bets last week on Cork and Kilkenny and Dublin and Tip. It's the matches are there, but there's really no foresight. We were regarding like, what happens if Laois, or if we went away and beat Cork? Hypothetically, we won the All Ireland. Does that mean we still only play McDonagh next year? Like, there's a lot of anomalies in the thing, and as I said, it's kind of scrum management. Let's see what's happened. Sure, I suppose it's the typical father thing. Sure, it'll be grand. It'll work its way out.
Very true. Joe, just a question is in for you on YouTube here, and if any viewers want to send in any questions on any social media platforms with hashtag The Hurling Show, Joe Murray asked Joe if he thinks they got any benefit from the Cork game, and there was 20 points in it, of course, but do you feel you got any benefit, the exposure to that level?
Absolutely. We've learned so much from the McDonagh final and the Cork match. I think Jogger Doyle, who to me is one of the best fullbacks in the country, was telling us after, like, he'd blisters on the soles of his feet from tracking Pat Horgan's runs. The amount of stuff lads would have learnt. And us as a management team, we need to see where the level is. Like, we thought lads were fit. Next minute you hear them crunching off a Cork lads. Like, we went out to get in your face aggressive, and for 10 minutes we couldn't catch them. Just the pace. So we definitely learnt from it. It was a great occasion to play in. There was a massive Cork crowd there. So the lads definitely were in good spirits after it, and the great part about it was every one of them was talking about what we need to do and where we need to be next year.
Excellent. And just before we go on to Cork, can I just ask you about Limerick, your own county, and how they're going to go on and win the All-Ireland by a point a man?
Sure, that's only coming from a tip, lad. So, we don't take any notice of that.
He's tipped now, Joe, because Dublin are gone anyway. So
he's more clubs and counties than Tiger Woods. Is that okay?
Says the man who goes around managing absolutely every team in the country.
Absolutely, and unlike you, I improve them.
Well, go on,
Limerick. I things that I'm saying. Listen, I might give you an old start next year if you move down to the
Well, go on. What about Limerick? You must be super impressed with them.
Look, to be fair, I'd actually lunch with Nicky Quaid yesterday, and I was just asking there how are they doing this, and he said just the appetite for places on the panel. He said John Kiley changes it up, the 26 changes every week, and he said just the appetite there. Anybody that's on the panel or that's on the team knows that if they don't perform, that there's someone else to come in, and they're just, look, I've known a lot of these lads for a good few years, and they're good lads. They're down to earth, and they're supremely skillful hurlers. But let's not forget, and I said it to Nicky yesterday, you go back 3 years ago, I think, when John Kiley and the lads took over, they were playing the short game inside in the Gaelic grounds of a dreary night. I think it was this Waterford Crystal Cup or whatever you call it, and every ball went to ground, short passing, everything broke down. And I was one of the lads in the stand, effing and blind and going, would you hit the bloody thing? But they stuck to it. They stuck to what they wanted to do, what the management wanted to do, and then it started to come right and they believed in it. I was even saying it to Nicky yesterday. there was a period there that nearly every second puck out he hit went out over the sideline. Do you know? But that was obviously, they were trying to isolate people one-on-one, and they stuck with it. And to be fair, the hurling they're playing at the moment is just phenomenal.
Cork are playing Kilkenny this weekend, and having just played against Cork or managed against Cork, can you tell me about the changes that they've brought into the team? Darragh Fitzgibbon is after going in centre forward or in the half forward line. Tim O'Mahony's after moving to midfield. Now, he was full forward for the under-21s last year, tried out at centre back this year for the seniors, didn't really work out. He's now at midfield. I would actually say midfield is the hardest position to learn in hurling. But what do you make of those two big changes that they've made in the team?
Yeah, but that was only for last week's match. It'll be interesting to see will they revert back to type again. I can't see him making massive changes. The one thing we've to remember is the only team to beat Limerick in Championship and League this year is Cork, as far as I know. They should have beaten us last year. The game was over if Robbie O'Flynn put that ball over the bar instead of passing it in and allowing Nicky to make the save. So they're not far off it. Like that. They have an unbelievable forward unit and midfield. Where you'd worry about them would be definitely in the backs. And look, I think we created over 37 scoring chances. We actually created more because we probably dropped 3 or 4 balls into the goalie's hands as well. So we created 40 chances against them, and teams that are a lot slicker, if they allow them create 40 chances, they're in trouble.
But do you think that if those changes did remain, that Tim O'Mahony midfield and Darragh Fitzgibbon, is it very like midway through the season, and you know, in a game that you win by 20 points, maybe you don't learn as much about your team, to fundamentally change your team midway through the season? Do you find that risky?
Yeah, it seemed a bit strange that they had done that against us, but maybe they'll return back to type. But look, the game is gone. It's gone so fluid now, and the fitness levels, like. You see with Limerick, Graham Mulcahy's back, cornerback, at times taking balls off of fellas, do you know? So positions really doesn't make a massive difference. And I think there's a, how do we call it, the battleground, the middle 8 is where a game will be won and lost, and having Tim O'Mahony at 8 or 11 or Darragh Fitzgibbon the same, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference.
And just a final question, Joe, before we let you go. Who do you think is going to win this game?
I'd fancy Cork. I still would fancy Cork. I'm still got my Munster bias on. I know the Leinster Championship, there was a lot more close games, but quality-wise, I still think the teams in Munster probably have it over the teams in Leinster.
Brilliant stuff, Joe. Thanks very much. We'll chat to you again soon.
No bother. Thanks, lads.
Cheers, Joe.
Yeah, how do you see that going, Cork against Kilkenny?
I still think Cork will win the All-Ireland from here, being honest with you. I think they're the one team that can beat Limerick. I think they'll just have too much firepower. I think they'll drag the Kilkenny backs around a bit. Obviously, Cork's defence is not unbelievably strong and can definitely be got at, but I don't know if Kilkenny have the firepower up front to do that. Be interesting to see who's going to pick up TJ Reid. They don't really have that type of man marker, I don't think. Bill Cooper might drop back.
I was thinking
deep.
Maybe Christopher Joyce might be the guy to do it, but even so, there's no one overly obvious.
He's not been a regular really either, do you know what I mean?
Mark Ellis has been playing centre back, so he might go centre forward directly on him, so by default he's on him. But like Mark Coleman certainly isn't the guy to match up with.
TJ will drift around as well.
It's going to be interesting to see, because that is the one person that they really need to look after.
Kilkenny have lost 6 games between league and championship this year. I just saw that stat earlier in the Kilkenny People. I thought that was an amazing stat.
Yeah, in fairness, I think Kilkenny, we spoke about where the kind of deficiencies have caught up with them multiple times, and it's whether they can outscore Cork, particularly if we end up in a game where that Cork forward line are likely to put up a scoreline. I'd be with Mick on this one. I think Cork are Kilkenny are probably a good matchup for Cork this weekend, and I do fancy them to advance to the semi-finals. I do wonder how Cork's defence will hold up if they play Limerick or Tipperary again later in the championship this summer. But I'd be worried about Kilkenny. Obviously, we saw in the Wexford game again, their forward line was kept reasonably quiet by Wexford, and I just don't think the Kilkenny are going to have enough scores. They need probably a big day out of someone like Colin Fennelly or someone just to take that pressure off TJ, and that's a consistent narrative throughout the year. And in the games where they've been beaten, generally they just haven't been able to run off enough scores to win those games.
If Ballyhale wasn't in Kilkenny, would they have a team at all at the moment? Because TJ Reid, Colin Fennelly, Adrian Mullen is now the new star player.
Brilliant the other day.
Even like Owen Cody with the under-20s looks like sooner rather than later he'll step up to be another main man. Joey Holden's in defence as well. So where would they be without these Ballyhale lads at the moment?
Yeah, particularly in attack, like when you have your three best forwards are all Ballyhale really as well. Interestingly, Brian Cody didn't send a player to the All-Ireland launch on Tuesday.
That'll poke the ball over the bar.
They did no press night before the Leinster final, which in turn meant I think Davy pulled his press night as well. Just be interesting to see. You'd imagine there'd be a big reaction to them from the Leinster final. They don't usually take defeats very well, but yeah, I find it hard to see Cork being beaten. You could just go through the 6 forwards and you're just thinking, if 3 of these play well, they'll win.
Well, you saw how the difficulty that a couple of the Kilkenny backs had, like Rory O'Connor gave Enda Morrissey a tough day, and that was never changed either. Actually, that's something that we've talked about with Brian Cody in the past. Remember in the 2016 All-Ireland final, James Callan was going to town, Joey Holden isolated, exposed, but there was no change made at all. So it'll be interesting to see how Cody addresses that. Does Killian Buckley, has he got a bit more training under his legs? Will he be ready to go? Because he had a really tough day on Diarmuid O'Keefe in the round-robin Wexford game as well. Owen Cadigan against Colin Fennelly, I think, is a very interesting matchup. Both very strong guys, both pretty quick. And Cadigan had done very well against Gillane in the round-robin in Munster as well against Limerick. But I think it's probably a bit more direct with Colin Fennelly. The ball bounced in front of him, he'll turn and go straight at you, which is probably not the way Gillane will go. He'll turn and maybe sidestep and then just try and wheel around and knock it over as well. Do you think Cadigan's good enough for Colin Fennelly?
Yeah, I think it's a good matchup. I mean, obviously I've been pretty impressed by Cadigan throughout the summer. As you say, he had a bit of a different task where Gillane likes a more kind of diagonal ball and maybe bringing the full back round to drift a little bit. I thought Cadigan had the athleticism and had no real problems that day. He looked really, really comfortable, I thought. It was an epic enough performance by him. Fennelly definitely hasn't been a full tilt all summer, but my word, he loves games in Croke Park and he loves a big game, and Fennelly's the kind of guy who can turn it on big style. So obviously if Cork are going to stop them, TJ is the first player that you want to lock down, but the second most important player in that forward line is the guy who's probably going to be wearing number 14, Colin Fennelly.
I played full back in a club match last night, and it really is such a tough position because the other team does try and isolate you and create huge space around you. And if the other team has time to look up and feed a ball in, it's almost impossible to get there first because they're going to play it to the right position for the forward. So that's where Owen Cadigan is going to be up against.
Your instinct, if you're up against Colin Fennelly, is to try and stay goal side quite a lot as well.
Well, you have to, which means that you're guaranteed to be at least a yard behind. If you're going to not expose the square, you always have to mark somewhat from behind or behind one shoulder or the other. And you can easily foul then. If the ball is popped in front of the full forward, just coming right into their chest as well, it's very hard to get there first without having your hand on the back or something like that.
Be amazed if Mark Ellis isn't sitting reasonably close to him to try and offer him some sort of cover.
Well, what if TJ Reid is a centre forward?
Yeah, I wouldn't be that surprised if they played not an orthodox sweeper, but if Mark Ellis still sat back in there and Bill Cooper or even someone dropped back on TJ.
Surely Mark Coleman is kind of their sweetest hurler, and he's the guy to. And I know last year people said he didn't do the sweeper role very good against Limerick. I actually thought he did it fairly well. But you reckon still Ellis, even despite Coleman probably having more hurling and more legs?
Yeah, I'd say that probably he plays that kind of deep line centre back role anyway, and doesn't really pick up a man a lot of the time. But that's the way they seem to be playing. What you say about Fennelly is very, very interesting. Yeah, like if you're playing full back now, county club or anything, you kind of have to have the pace of a cornerback and the aerial ability of a fullback. It's a really, really hard mix now at the moment. Yeah, it's a really difficult position to play.
Couple of comments in from YouTube. The standard of Leinster hurling is very poor. It will be a Tip v Limerick Cork final. If Ellis can continue the way he is going with O'Leary in the corner, I think Cork can win the championship. I think Tipperary are relying on Cork to beat Limerick to have any chance of winning.
And that's a fair point.
But of course, Tip, they'll be so rocked after that defeat to Limerick that it'd be interesting to see how far Tip go. Mossy Lines on YouTube. Owen Cadigan will pick up TJ Reid. Marked him in the second half of Kieran O'Connor challenge and shut him down. Not really sure you can read too much.
It's a bit of a difference, but interesting. Yeah.
Charity game. Cork put him out centre back for second half of Westmeath game, also to prepare him for Sunday. Okay, well that's fair enough.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Michael O'Callaghan. Sorry for shutting you down there, Mossy. Actually, in the first place. Michael O'Callaghan on YouTube. Cadigan may pick him up, but wouldn't be sure of Cahalane MacDonald at full back as well. I presume he means MacDonald.
Yeah, Steve MacDonald. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's call this game.
It's Cork for me.
Yeah, Cork.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Cork as well.
There, that's a lovely scenario for Kilkenny. It's an ideal situation for him to be coming in.
Yeah, we've been written off. Didn't you say Ross King was listening to us right off leash last week?
I thought this was very good, actually, yeah, because I texted Ross on Monday just to see would he do a piece for the paper, and he agreed, thankfully, and he said, oh, Jesus, that's gas. I was only listening to you and Shane and the boys on the Hurling Show on the YouTube link before I left for the match last Sunday. So any listeners, and Ross is now a friend of the show, he'll be called from now on.
Yeah.
So it just shows you that listening and to reading things and listening to things going on in the media has no effect in their performance whatsoever.
Sorry, Roddy.
If you could pin the Hurling Show up on a wall and bait Hurley off it to motivate yourself, it could be going well. Yeah, Kilkenny need to find more scores, and they need to find a way to get Pádraig Walsh into the game. Actually, we'll have a quick word with former Laois manager, player, and former James Stephens manager in Kilkenny, Niall Rigney now. How are you doing, Niall?
Good, Shane. How are things?
Not too bad.
Thanks.
Let's reflect, before we just talk quickly about Kilkenny with you as well, can you just reflect on Laois's momentous win last Sunday?
It's fantastic. It's just brilliant to see the amount of kids around the place in Laois jerseys and hurleys instead of footballs for a change. And yeah, it was just a magical day for us, I suppose. We're in bonus territory now, with winning the Joe McDonagh and getting into the championship proper for 2020. And look, a huge win for us last Sunday. For the lads to turn around 6 days after, a great day in Croke Park, it was just brilliant to see.
Yeah, and I think it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago I spoke to you for a newspaper article when Laois had finally beaten Offaly for the first time in Donkey's year in the championship. That was a huge win for as far as you were concerned then. Is this the biggest win that Laois have had in the championship? For a long time, obviously.
It was. I suppose I'd have to be honest that I would have definitely have seen Shane maybe since 1985 when we beat Wexford in the Leinster Championship semi-final to set up a final with Offaly. It was just huge. It was just huge for us. But again, what was really pleasing was the fact that the short turnaround, to see their touch, their conditioning, their focus, their work rate, and their hunger was just immense, and it took us all by surprise, to be honest.
Yeah, so we'll come back to Laois in a second, but just first of all, to reflect on Kilkenny, is there anything about this team that they seem to be misfiring a bit at the moment? They've lost 6 games between league and championship this year. We're all tipping Cork to win the game. Could you give any reason why you think Kilkenny are more likely to win this game?
Probably Kilkenny being Kilkenny with their hunger and their savage work rate. One thing that Cork will definitely bring to the game, we all know what Patrick Horgan can do, and but if you do take Patrick Horgan out of the phrase, out of the game, limit his possession, to basically quality possession, which is what Kilkenny do, the way they hunt in 2s and 3s. I wouldn't be as confident in saying Cork will take the game. I think there's one thing about Kilkenny: when their backs are to the wall, they will come out fighting, and be under no illusion that's exactly what will happen on Sunday. So with Wexford playing a spare man at the back the last day, and Kevin Foley, he played really well. Pádraig Walsh was the spare man standing on the D at the other end of the field, and he never got going in the game, never got involved. There's not going to be a sweeper in this game at all. Well, perhaps someone will go back to man mark TJ, but I don't think it'll be quite as obvious a spare man at either end. So do you see Pádraig Walsh getting more involved in this game? Yeah, well, they'll need him. They'll need him to be in this game, Shane, make no mistake. It's, I suppose, the one thing that Kilkenny have been trying to figure out over the last couple of years is actually where to play Pádraig Walsh. He's been playing full-back, wing-back, centre-back, sometimes midfield there in the league. It's just probably utilise him in the best position possible. Ideally I'd love to see him out 5, but, they're blooding a new guy in Hugh Lawler at full-back at the moment, and, he's just hugely influential, as Tommy was when he played 5. I think that's the question for Brian. Where to play Pádraig Walsh is probably the big question. Yeah, and just then to finish up on that game, do you see Kilkenny winning it, or is it Cork for you? No, I'd stick with Kilkenny, to be honest. I do. I think they just bring this savage level of intensity and work rate. And if you do look at the Wexford game, Wexford brought back, they had nearly 3 guys on TJ at one stage, and he's still able to pull away with a serious level of scores. And in saying that, you'd like to Richie Leahy and maybe Conor Fogarty and Colin Fennelly, who didn't fire really, really well that day, and I'm sure Brian would have reminded them of that, and I think Patrick Horgan, Kilkenny will certainly go about, limiting his scores, limiting his general play, and I certainly would never write off a Kilkenny team when people think they're going to the game as underdogs.
I want to ask you about Eddie Brennan now, and I'll bring the boys in on it in a second as well, and what difference he's made this year. What has been the change? And I thought it was very interesting that he started his season, that when he was going through pre-season, he was still in the club championship and playing against Portlaoise and some of the guys involved at Laois, so it's quite a hilarious start for him. But what has he brought this year?
Look, to be fair, Shane, I was part of the panel, I suppose, that interviewed with Eddie, and there was 5 guys interviewed, and it was just his enthusiasm, and he's the one thing that was really brilliant from our perspective was his knowledge of the Laois players and the knowledge of the Laois setup. He knew there was a long way to go, a long road to go, and they're still only on that road, probably after joining that road. But it was just his enthusiasm, and he's just a likeable guy, but he's just a guy that talks serious sense, and it's hurling orientated, and the players bought into that. I think one of the lads there mentioned Ross King, and probably the sugar cubes, and he was talking about poke-out strategies, and you would be attracted to Eddie, in conversation. I've met him many a time this year, and you could spend hours just chatting to him about hurling, and he's just a really likeable guy. And I suppose, look, obviously, his profile just speaks for itself. When Eddie broke into Kilkenny set up first, he would always have said himself that, not publicly, of course, but it took him 4 or 5 years to probably break into that Kilkenny team, and he ended up with an 8 All-Ireland medal winner, and something he would never obviously speak about here, and he doesn't, because he always based it on honesty and hard work, and that's something that he has definitely brought to these players, and that was hugely evident last Sunday, the honesty levels, and the one thing that's really standing out, Shane, is the young fellas, they're really enjoying themselves. They're playing with a smile on their face, and they're playing with a sense of freedom and no fear. And make no mistake, it was there last Sunday. They showed Dublin the respect that Dublin deserved, and they'll do the very same on Sunday. And also, they showed Dublin that respect, but not fearing the challenge, and certainly not to fear the challenge on Sunday.
Niall mentioned the enthusiasm there. Ross said he sat down with him for 2 hours, and he said Eddie spoke for 1 hour and 55, and Ross wouldn't be one to shy away from talking. But he just said he had him bought and sold after like 2 minutes. He was like, I couldn't just get over he actually said just how mad for Laois.
This was to bring him back onto the panel.
Yeah, this was to bring him back onto the panel. He just said he had him hooked after a minute or that, and as I said, the sugar cubes, he just wanted to show all the tactics that he was using. He wanted to show that it was different as well. And interesting with the Laois setup, like you have Tommy Fitz, who's not long gone, you have Niall Corcoran, who's not long gone, you have Eddie, who's not long gone. They're lads that are very in tune with, I suppose, how hurling has changed in the last 10 years, and even how dealing with players and young fellas has changed as well. Like, so he's had a massive effect.
Explain the sugar cubes to the people that wouldn't have heard about that.
Yeah, so obviously there's 1,000,001 different types of puck-out strategies and things like that. So I think they were drinking coffee, and there was a little bowl of sugar cubes there, probably brown and white. So he would have put down brown ones for the opposition team and white for his team.
So like a tactics board with
pretty much, and he was just moving them around and showing what way the puck-outs were going and showing what way end of rolling was going. And when you see a lad that's that enthusiastic about it, like, it's very hard for that not to rub off on you as well.
I was thinking during the Dublin match, and even beforehand, the fact that Niall Corcoran, former Dublin player, Galway minor, still playing with Kilmacud, the fact that so many of these Dublin players are players he would know so well. Not, of course, obviously Ronan Hayes and Oisin O'Rourke, who are his own club mates, but he'd have marked so many of the guys. He'd have seen how Matty Kenny sets up teams as well. So I thought it's huge to have someone like that. Like, that was such an asset coming into that game.
Yeah, essentially it's like having a mole in the camp, isn't it?
Yeah.
And like, in fairness to Eddie and indeed all the backroom team they have there, like, I was chatting to both Stapleton last Sunday ahead of the game, and he made the very reasonable point. It was like, look how far this team has come in a 13-month spell. Like, they were playing Kerry last year, where Laois could potentially have gone down to the Christie Ring. Everything felt fairly down at the time. Not a great league campaign before that. The style of hurling wasn't all that good last year either. To what this management team has turned things around to quite aside from the results. The way that they play hurling is very easy on the eye. It's based on very high work rate as well. Like Eddie and the backroom team have had a massive difference. Like, creating players like Charlie Dwyer and so on, you got to go back to Satanta programs and Pat Critchley. I think this group are very respectful of the help they've been given as they go up from Cheddar Plunkett, and Niall helping out with moving the team along to a different direction. But this management team have had an amazing transformative effect over the last 12 months.
Niall beat Tipperary this weekend and you have an All-Ireland semi-final against Wexford. How does that sound?
It's going to be stuff of dreams, really, but look, we're under no losing chance. The three happiest men outside of Laois people leaving Moore Park last Sunday was definitely Liam Sheedy, Eamon O'Shea and Tommy Dunn. They walked out in front of me and nice and quietly, but I'm sure when they hit the car they were probably saying, look, what a game for us to get to try and bounce back after a poor performance by their standards against Limerick and only scoring 112, which today is probably realistically a half-time score. And look, they would be thrilled with that, and
I don't actually agree with you on that point, Niall, because like the world and its mother will be expecting Tipperary to win this game by 15 points, and like Tip should realistically win by that much. I think Dublin are the sort of team that will compete well against any team, but they don't really have the forwards to put a side that should be at a lower level to the sword. So I think Tipperary could win this by 10, pick the same team as the Munster final and not actually learn anything about their team. I think they needed to play a strong team so they could figure out, okay, if we try someone new in a different position and figure out does that work or not. So Tip should win this game either way, and they're not going to learn a lot about themselves.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. But the one thing that, from our perspective, what Laois need to do here, for me, they need to get three things right. And I know Eddie and Niall will certainly do this. It's pretty basic, really. They just need to get the matchups right. You take Bubbles, for example. Now I know Eddie will know first-hand Bubbles' play, being Killinall, and Eddie was involved. He had a hand in Killinall last year working with him, so he'd know his strengths. Obviously, he's a super forward, but also his weaknesses. He has to make sure that the matchups are right. He needs to get his structure right. Does he play one or two sweepers? Maybe one just really high and 2, 3, 4 and a half forward line, 3 in the midfield, or whatever way he's going to set that up. And the most important thing, he just needs to make sure that they stay in the game as long as they possibly can. Irrespective, you're going to have the curtain raiser, I suppose, which is very strange to a Laois game, is Cork and Kilkenny. We need to keep those people. Kilkenny wouldn't be great fans of Tip if we're being honest about it, and Cork mightn't be either, so if they might get behind the Laois crowd or the Laois team on the pitch, and to keep them there as long as possible and to keep ourselves in the game as long as possible. And certainly ask the questions, and like I said, show them the respect that they deserve, but don't fear the challenge. It's a massive day for them, and it's a stuff of dreams for ourselves as former players, and whatever way we went in relation to coaching or selecting and managing, now back to being a supporter of it, and we're just very, very proud of the young fellas, and I just hope they drive it on and keep believing, and just keep believing in the process and just keep at it.
I'd say that's one of the reasons why Niall is going for, one of the many reasons he's going for Kilkenny win. He wants as many of them there to stay on for the second game.
But there are a lot of good forwards in that Laois team there. Like Willie Dunphy scored 4 points from play,
and would have been one of the more unheralded forwards too as well. Like
Aaron Dunphy won 2. Aina Lyons did really well on Chris Crummy, won a couple of frees. Chad Dwyer as well. I scored a point and set up a few as well.
Aina Lyons provides something a little bit different in that forward line as well, because it seems like Neil Foyle is going to be a bench player. Aina Lyons probably come off the bench as well. Like he's a very good ball winner. And it gives you something different to think about.
Yeah, Picky Maher was named to start last week but didn't play as well. But that Tip backline doesn't have a whole lot of pace. So you probably do, just to finish up then, Niall, you probably do think there are opportunities for scores for Laois here.
Absolutely, and I think it was pretty evident probably in the first game, was it Tip's first game against Cork, Shane, where they were in trouble on the full back line in particular. And when you see a Tip team having to drop back Paddy Maher as a sweeper in championship hurling, that's a surprise, because they would be a traditionalist team like Kilkenny have been for years. And it was only then when Paddy Maher went back, there is weaknesses there, make no mistake. And like I said, it's about Eddie getting his structure right. And I think Will mentioned Willie Dunphy. Willie was just magnificent on Sunday, the way he chased down that ball. When many a forward wouldn't have got there, he chased it down, won it, took on his man, sent a great ball across, and Aaron Dunphy was there for to bat the ball into the net, and that just, you could actually sense it from there on, that level of work rate and honesty was there within the group. and that's virtually where the result came in our favour.
And Laois by how many at the weekend?
Call the Jets now, Shane. I think, look, to be honest, if we really go at it and we really, believe in the process and stay working no matter what, forget about the scoreboard, don't look at it, stay believing and stay with the hooks and the blocks, as Eddie will always say himself, the hooks and the blocks is what gets it there and gets us going. I think genuinely that, look, if we perform to that level, at a really high level, and we got out of there, calling it honestly and straight, if we stayed within 6-7 points a tip, I think that would be a really good day for us.
Great stuff, Niall. Enjoy the game on Sunday.
Thank you very much, lads. God bless.
Thank
you. Bye.
Do you know what, Shane? Willie Dunphy pulled off a wonderful trick last week as well on the highlights. They call him Young Willie Dunphy. Maybe this is about how he's gone under the radar for a few seasons. I think this is his 9th season with the Leafs team. And Derek Hannon called him Young Willie Dunphy at the weekend.
Is that like when Martin O'Neill referred to young Matt Doherty, even though he was like that? Cyrus Christie was sort of ease him through the game, even though there's about 9 months between them. Apparently we have a buff video that we're going to throw up here as well, and also a wrestling image that Verney can explain as well. They'll come up now in a second, I think.
Team, what a victory today after their sentence to Dubs to delete.
That's brilliant, isn't it?
Niall Rigney's local golf club there, Port Laois Golf Club.
I think they picked him up, or he's on the way back to the car or something. They picked him up. Oh yeah, this is just to keep the WWE team. So obviously, Paul Bearer is a former manager to The Undertaker. Obviously, the way I would look at it is Shane is the greatest, how should we say, bigger upper of Matty Kenny I've ever come across. So Paul Bearer eventually turned on The Undertaker when things were going wrong. So I'm just wondering, are you going to call it as it is and call out the mistakes that your former manager made on Sunday? Because it's one of the, like, it's to be Dublin manager for one of the biggest shocks. They didn't look ready. The bench, they didn't seem to have lads on the bench that should have been on the bench. Liam Rush trained the Tuesday night, wasn't named on the 26th. They were very slow to make substitutions. Your own kind of thoughts on that?
Oh, I thought it's a huge missed opportunity. It was a very, very poor performance, very, very flat. Too many of the same players probably playing in the inside line, Ronan Hayes, Oisin O'Rourke and Eamon Dillon as well. None necessarily ball winners, but I do think that was partly down to, like, I'm not making excuses for Dublin, but if we do look at the facts that were there, they didn't have Mark Shuta as a ball winner all year, he's been injured. Didn't have Liam Rush as a ball winner in there. Too much selfish shooting in the half forward line. Really, really unimpressed with the players who were supposed to be so brilliant against Galway.
Were they just looking ahead to the next game, a lot of it as well?
I think subconsciously they were, right? So
O'Donnell was named in the 26th, like, it didn't feature obviously because...
Well, he wasn't right. I doubt he was right. He was still in the 26th.
Which is bizarre in a way.
Same with Cian O'Callaghan as well. He was back into the squad. But I don't think that you could but self-consciously have one or subconsciously have one eye on the following game, because you've beaten Galway. Of course you're going to beat Laois. So I know from being in a dressing room with Matty Kenny as well, like, so in the 2017 county championship we won the county title, and then from that point on everyone was talking about it's going to be Coola against Na Piarsaigh in the All-Ireland Championship and the following in 2018 in March. So he had to try and safeguard against that from the word go. Now, none of this is taken away from the fact that it was a very poor Dublin performance, and taking off Keane Boland in the second half when he was the only guy after scoring.
Exactly, yeah.
I disagree with that as well, and maybe Matty has his own reasons, but I disagree with it. Anyway, so when all the talk was about Coola and Na Piarsaigh, the whole time what he was trying to do was fireproof against that seeping into the team. Now, it never did, and maybe certain teams we played we were so far ahead of you couldn't but beat. But then again, Dublin were thought to be 10 points better than Laois. So I know that he wouldn't have looked ahead to the next game, but I think certain players might have let it seep in. At the same time, Laois were very good. Like, Laois played with 6 men at the back plus John Lennon back as a sweeper as well, whereas Dublin would have had Sean Moran as the extra man at the other end as well. But I thought that the entire Dublin team got dragged up the field like this. So you had a very condensed area. John Lennon was always getting to the ball first. I don't think Dublin worked the ball up the field particularly well. Also, there were a couple of times in the first half especially, where a Dublin man, and not to pick out one guy only, but just there was one incident where Sean Tracy got it, and he's well able to score. Like, he played the league game with us last night, he must have fired over 3 or 4 from play from midfield, but he got the ball here, and there was maybe, just to pick out another name, maybe it was Ronan Hayes, tried to play a ball through the eye of a needle, and it went out wide. And there was a few more, I remember one going wide, just dribbling out over the line as well. They just weren't themselves. I think subconsciously they looked ahead to the next game.
Manager must take a lot of
course,
the blame there. Like you have to, it's your job to keep people's feet on the ground. I suppose.
There's
no
doubt that there's a bit of embarrassment at that defeat, because it's a game you should be winning. There's no excuses for not beating a team that was operating at the Joe McDonagh. Like you've gotten to a league semi-final, so you're obviously a pretty good team and performed okay against Limerick in that when other teams are getting hammered by Limerick. Look at what happened to Tipperary. And before that, they'd beaten Tipperary in Thurles in the league as well. They got through Leinster. They gave up good performance for 50 minutes against Kilkenny. Should have beaten Wexford, being honest. Did beat Galway and beat Carlow and did well. So yes, it's a disastrous end to the season, but overall, there's an awful lot of good there.
No, there is, yeah. Paddy Smith should still get his All-Star nomination that he was going to get as well, but he was one of the only ones that came away with credit the other day.
Yeah, so we're going to have to finish up now in the next 60 seconds, lads. Tipperary against Laois, it's hard to see past Tip winning here, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm sure Roddy King won't like us saying it, but Tipperary obviously should win and will win.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just 3 weeks in a row. The only thing I would say is Tipperary are not coming into this. Dublin were coming in full of confidence. Tipperary are not coming in full of confidence. They're probably a bit wounded. Whether that'll work in the sense that they'll deliver a performance or they'll be shackled a bit by it, I don't know. But you'd find it very hard to see Tipperary, just unlike Dublin, have the forwards that can do the damage.
Yeah, I thought there'd be more time to go into this. We'll probably go into it next week, assuming Tip don't get shocked. But I think Tip need to rework their team as well. Probably new partner midfield for Noel McGrath. I think they now need a backline a full backline that's comfortable carrying the ball out from the back. I'd be looking at maybe Barrett if he's fit, Brendan Maher, maybe Alan Flynn. Allow them to carry out the ball from the back, because just going long all the time isn't working and could lead to it.
If they're going to do it, they're going to have to try something this weekend.
And that's why I thought they'd have been better off playing Dublin against a physical team. But anyway, that's it for the Hurling Show this week. There'll be plenty of coverage of the GAA on OTB Radio all weekend. So we'll see you again next week.
The Hurling Show. From Off the Ball.
I hear you some wiring needs a fixing, ma'am. The name's Buzz.